Welcome Year 10 to Lesson 11 of our video tutorials. Today's lesson we're going to quickly look at geometry proofs of simple shapes. So, let's have a look at what we have to know this lesson. Firstly, what is a proof? To simply understand how to prove something, we need to know what the properties of it is first. Now, properties are what you have already been told about different shapes, e.g. that a square has four sides of equal length that meet at right angles, that a triangle has three sides, that a rectangle is a four-sided shape with two pairs of corresponding sides that are parallel. So simply, a proof asks you to show that something is something because of the properties it has. So what exactly does that mean? Let's look at proving why a rectangle is a rectangle. Here is a rectangle, and here are its properties. That a rectangle has four sides. That it has two pairs of sides that are equal and parallel. That its interior angles are equal to 90 degrees. And that its diagonals are equal and bisect each other, meaning that when the two diagonals cross, they cut each other in half. So a question in an exam might ask you something like this one below. VWXY, so they're talking about this whole triangle here, rectangle, is a quadrilateral whose diagonals VX, this diagonal here, and WY, this diagonal here, are equal and bisect each other. Prove that it must be a rectangle. Now, what it means to prove that this is a rectangle is to simply prove all of the properties are true. Let's have a look at the properties and look at the example below, and we'll give you a clue as to how you might go about proving why this diagram here, or the shape VYXW, is actually a rectangle. 1. A rectangle has four sides. This shape clearly has four sides. 2. It has two pairs of sides that are equal and parallel. Now, I've told you before that you're not allowed to actually say something is something unless you are given the information. And if we looked at this diagram here, it doesn't tell us that both pairs of sides are equal and parallel. The symbol for equal or the symbol for parallel is non-existent on this shape. So that would be something we would have to look at proving. Thirdly, its interior angles are equal to 90 degrees. So once again, we know that this is likely just by looking at the shape, but we can't say it's true without proving it. It hasn't given us the information to say that the interior angles in this shape here are 90 degrees. Lastly, that its diagonals are equal and bisect each other. Now, happily, the question here has actually told us that that is true, that the diagonals VX and WY are equal and bisect each other. So simply, looking again at the properties of this rectangle, that it has four sides, now that's true, that it has two pairs of sides that are equal and parallel, likely, but we need to prove it, we haven't been shown this. That its interior angles are equal to 90 degrees, now again, it's likely, but we haven't actually been shown this. And lastly, that its diagonals are equal and bisect each other, and happily day, we've actually been told this. we would look at them and say, okay, to prove that this is actually a rectangle, we would need to find ways of showing the two middle properties, these two here. Now we're going to go over this in class. I'll show you the actual proof on the next page and you can have a quick look at it, and we'll go over it more when I see you next. Looks pretty messy, but this would be the full proof to show that this whole shape is a rectangle. Whilst messy, it does use our knowledge of congruent triangles to help us prove what we need to, and it gives us a bit more of the understanding of the language of proofs, such as these, which are therefore signs, such as you can see clearly on the right hand side next to each line that there is reasoning for everything that's said. Alright, well, have a quick look at this, and as I said, we will look over it in class when I see you next. Before we go, important things you must know from this lesson is that this symbol here means therefore, and we use this within our geometry proofs many times. If we flip the symbol upside down, this means because. Secondly, every time you prove any singular property, you must include a reason. This is called reasoning. And very lastly, that some questions will ask you to prove a shape is a shape, whilst others will simply ask you to prove one or more properties of a shape. And we'll look at both types of examples in class. So, next lesson that we have on here will be very formal geometrical proofs. And this, I said we were going to be looking at similarity. We'll look at this first, and which will help us or give us access to a tool to allow us to prove similarity in triangles by the end of the week. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson, and I will see you in class this week.